Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar, or maybe I should call the happiness platform, because today we are going to talk about happiness within organizations and I guess about happiness in general. And for that, we have invited an international leadership expert within happiness, Lars Kure. And we will get back to his presentation in a short while, but for now, I would like to ask 5 minutes of your attention because I'd like to explain a little bit more about my initiative, which is Leadership Platform, and for which these webinars are based upon. So this is my second webinar, and we had the first webinar already with Nikolai Knudsen. And after the first webinar, I received the feedback from some of you asking what's in it for them, or value proposition. I figured that you were missing that why part. So here is my why part. First of all, let me just tell you that I've been blessed to meet many great leaders in my life, including all of you in this network. And I always felt that there is something in it, and that is leadership. I hold passion for people who are creating their own ways, who are authentic, courageous, and being passionate about what they are doing. I admire this kind of personalities. So my intention first and foremost was to reconnect with all of you and know you better and your expertise better. That is why I'm holding webinars, and I'm planning to hold at least 6 more webinars during the first half of this year. And I will be talking with leaders representing different sectors like NGOs and green innovation and IT world and so on and so forth. It's not necessarily top management leaders, it's not necessarily business leaders from the real world. It can be some entrepreneurs who have done something out of their passion. And this initiative is my passion. It comes from my heart. And this is maybe why I cannot state a value proposition yet, because I'd like to know you better. And my leadership platform has the same message. First of all, I'd like to create platforms from knowing each other better. And by that, I believe we can create synergies, we can create matchmaking activities. And there is some evidence for that already. I have some people who have some specific interests. And on the other side, I have people who have, who can match those interests. So I felt that I needed to explain that why. And I would like very much to hear your why. Why are you interested in this platform? What are you missing? What would be your expectations? And last but not least, thank you very much for those speakers who hold webinars with me, Nikolai, Lars today, and many other speakers in the future. I appreciate that a lot. So thank you for that. And with that note, definitely we can discuss that at the end of the webinar. With that note, I'd like to start our webinar with the introductions. So guys, if you can introduce yourself very briefly, who you are and what's your expertise. Maybe some volunteers for that? Someone would like to start? Yes? Yes, Jan?
Yes. Hello, my name is Jan, and hello. And I met Gitter some years ago because I'm working as a EURES advisor, and EURES means European Employment Service in fact, it's bringing together job seekers and companies, bringing them together across the borders of Europe, because there is a free mobility of work. So my job is in fact visualize job possibilities and try to get all the relevant information so people can make their decision on working abroad.
Mhm.
That's my task. That's my job, and I'm very happy to participate here because I think I can learn some things I can use in my work, and
Yeah.
that's the reason why I'm here.
All right. Thank you very much, Jan. I
Welcome.
appreciate that. And that you are first. All right. Who's the second one?
Well,
Maybe. Okay. Mhm.
mm,
Yeah.
hello, hello.
Hi, hi.
Do you hear me?
Yes, and see
Yeah,
you
so it's
eventually.
yeah, so hello, my name is Inessa. I'm an organizational psychologist. At the moment, I am with my team and group of science developing instrument measuring employee value propositions and happiness at work also. So I work with the organizations and individuals as as psychologist and advisor, where is uh, individual and group happiness, and how to understand what are the elements of happiness at work. So thank you for invitation.
Thank you very much for joining. That's nice. That's nice. Thank you, Nessa. And now, who would like to be Nicholas? Maybe you?
Yeah, hi all. Yes, I can actually do a brief presentation. Sorry, I'm in transition and my network is breaking a little bit. So
It's
if
fine.
you
We can
lose
hear
me,
you.
yeah, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I work with Giedre in Danske Bank. So I'm currently still in Danske Bank, heading the AML KYC implementation area. And well, I'm just curious to see where this set of webinars will bring all of us in you, Giedre, as well. And particularly today, very interesting topic: organizational happiness. Who doesn't want to be happy, right? So
Mm.
so I'll just listen in to that, and hopefully it's going to be interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I hope so too. No, actually, I'm sure that it will be interesting. Okay, and then last but not least, I guess it's me and Lars. Maybe you can present yourself later if it's okay with you.
Sure, sure, I'll do that.
Okay, good. So, yeah, for me, what is specific about me is that I hold international experience, mostly from working in Denmark for almost 10 years. But also I worked and lived in Belgium 2 times, and then in Bornholm. For those who do not know, Bornholm is a Danish island, a beautiful island which is located close to Sweden. I highly encourage you to visit that island. It's beautiful. Talking about my professional experience, I have worked mostly with the development projects, European projects, that is in correlation with my education, mostly from Denmark, but also from Brussels. And last but not least, my master's in innovation and entrepreneurship from the Copenhagen Business School. For the last few years, I have worked, like Nicholas mentioned, I have worked in Danske Bank, first as an IT consultant, and then as a consultant, as an IT analyst, and then as a consultant with internal banking projects like MiFID II, anti-money laundering. And right now, I am very active on a public speaking area. I've been the Toastmaster or public speaker for more than 4 years, and from time to time, I do trainings for companies. So, all right, so we can maybe carry on, and it's time to introduce Lars. We met, most probably we met with Lars on Bornholm because he is from Bornholm. And since 2013, we have kept in connection. And, recently, I guess that happiness virus on social media and elsewhere caught my attention. I can relate easily to happiness. I'm from Lithuania, and we have our history, we have our mentality, and especially when I return home from Denmark, I could feel that we still lack awareness of uh, of the fact that people can be not just hardworking and result-seeking, but also happy, motivated, engaged at work. So, and I guess times are changing, and we need to learn how to work from the happiness perspective. And for that, we have today our international expert, the creator of happiness sweet spot model, and the author of his book of the organizational happiness, who's been running lots of courses and trainings for the leaders and people within organizations, Lars Kure. So, Lars, the floor is yours. Can you tell us how to put that happiness into practice?
Thank you, Kira.
And
Thank you a
hello
lot.
again.
And yeah. Yes, thank you, and thank you a lot for the nice, very nice introduction. So I think it's a luxury that it's a little group, because I think that also opens up for discussions and going where the energy is, and if there are any specific interests, we can have that discussion. And so I think I will have in a minute, I'll tell a little bit about myself, but just to structure the next at least half an hour, I will have a little bit of a presentation that I will also share with you as a handout. You can have it afterwards, but just a little bit of the frameworks that I've been working with in terms of organization happiness, things like that. And then I hope we can have a conversation about it. And even I would encourage also to connect and co-create if there are anything that you see that fits together or whatever with what you're doing and what I have a lot going on these days around happiness, especially with leaders and organizations. Yeah, so let me start. So I'm in Copenhagen right now. I have my family and one of my offices here in Copenhagen. I spent at least half of my time in Copenhagen. I travel a lot, but I want to be home with my wife and my 4 kids also. So I also have clients in Copenhagen in the Nordic region, and I just want to show you where we are in Copenhagen. It's a very nice spot in Copenhagen. So this is where we are right now. So we are in the center of Copenhagen. So what I'm doing, if my why, you could say. So one thing is to say that I'm a international trusted advisor and expert and Harvard graduate and things like that you say, but you can look that up on LinkedIn. I think my passion is unlocking potential. So I work with people either on one-to-one. I work sometimes with managers that have an important task of people. I work with groups and I work with organizations about unlocking potential. How can you work with people, groups, and organizations about unlocking their potential? And one of the keys to that, I think, is happiness. And we can call it many things, but there is a window right now in terms of the happiness, as you said. I don't remember what you said, but the happiness virus, or there's something about happiness that has a nice vibe to it. So some organizations right now look into happiness. Some organizations call it well-being. Some organizations call it motivation, employee engagement. We call it many things, but it's around that spectrum that I work with organizational happiness. So I work here in the Nordic region in North Europe, and I spend a lot of time in Costa Rica with UN and the Tisch University there, teaching positive leadership. US teaching something in Pakistan and in the Arab-speaking world also. So the book Organization Happiness that I wrote, I have it here, almost a year ago, can now be read by more than 2 billion people. It's an interesting perspective, and or it's an interesting. There's an interesting potential in that, I think. So a little story. When I wrote that book, for me, I've been head of HR, HR director, vice president in different organizations. I've been responsible for HR in many organizations, covering the last 25 years. I've also been consultant at some instances. But very often, some of the things I thought was very difficult was getting from words and talking about humans in our organization or our colleagues to actually getting it into action, or actually getting it into behavior. How do we change behavior when we say that people are the most important assets? What do we mean by that? What does it look like? How do we act in organizations? And when I wrote the book a year ago, or we published a year ago, it was more attempt to say how can we get from strategy to action. And I think because there's so much academic around happiness, there's so much, I think we have enough academics. I think we have so many cases that happier, healthier employees, they just perform better. We know that. So from an organizational perspective, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for happier, healthier employees, both to have a responsibility for the individuals in the organization, and it's also a very, very, very good business case. And I think that it's almost like you can present it like what is not to like in that sense. So when I published it in last year, earlier last year, it's a little bit of a vulnerable situation when you publish something. I published a few books, but when you put it out there, you put your heart into it, and it's always how is it received by your peers and by your customers and the people you respect. So, but one of the, I mean, I must say there was a real pull in the market. What I experienced after only 1 week was that the book became a #1 bestseller in Japan for some reason that I still don't know, and I'm still trying to find out. But and after that, it became a #1 in the US. I wanted that to happen because I'm interested in that market, but also in Austria and Canada and other markets. So there was really a pull about how to organizational happiness. What are the recipe, or how can you, from a practitioner's perspective, look into organizational happiness? So that's a little bit about the story. And I was very humbled, and still I'm sometimes surprised by the subject organizational happiness. So I spent a lot of my time talking about this and also working with organizations how to implement that. I think what I would like to do, let me share a little presentation. It's some slides, but it's a little bit about the concepts, and it's very simple, but that also gives you a little bit of perspective and how it comes from the mega trends around happiness down to an organizational context. And now I'm going to try to share this presentation with you. I think we are there. Do you see a presentation?
Yes, yes,
No?
I can see.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good. So I've flipped through this, and this is also so you can have this afterward if you're interested, or if there's something you want to talk about or connect about or co-create around. I'm very much into connecting with people with a passion for well-being or happiness, and how we can spread the word around that. So I think it really makes a real difference. So first, a little bit about the mega trends. I think there is something. This is, if you're looking for a sign, this is it. It's there's so much going on around happiness and organizational happiness that there is a window now that many organizations are asking about it. Many groups of leaders are looking into this. What is this? Yet a conversation you can have in some of the boardroom is a difficult conversation, but then we can call it another thing. We can call it employee engagement or something else, or well-being. We're talking about stress, anxiety in workplaces, and I think the recent research I saw from the US, it was like 25% of the population in the US had the last 12 months had some kind of mental health issue that you could relate to that. So there's a huge trend there that looking into how can we address that in some way. And I think some of the experts, and maybe we have one here, some of the experts say what we're looking for is really connection and meaning. And we're not getting it at work. Very few of us are getting it at work. And then we go out and buy a car, a big black car or something else, and it doesn't really give us satisfaction. It just makes it worse. We're looking for the meaning and the connection. So happiness is one of the answers to that, I think, at least from a conceptual level. So we very often talk about operational excellence, business process reengineering, best practice. These are things when we talk about having a competitive advantage. But this is not enough anymore. We need more. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. This is something we all have or should have, but this is not what gives us a competitive advantage if we look at it from an organization point of view. What is your real unique competitive advantage is in your purpose, your culture, and how you manage and lead your people. This is where you can really differentiate yourself from others in the markets that you're in. And now I'm getting into a little bit into talking a very business case like from an organization perspective. And I just want to show a little bit about the business cases. And this is the business case that I have, or have been working with, or it's from somewhere else, or it's from this scientific research that we have on organizational happiness and real employee engagement. And you can look at it like this, and this is really interesting figures even for the CEO. I think this is really a business case. There's something going up, and when you look at it like this, you can see performance is going up in this case from 8 to 31%. Why it's 8 to 31? So let me go through the last slides here. Around the business case, there's a lot going up here, and all this is documented by cases. It's interesting, and of course you can apply this to your organization or to a case that you have. And there's also something going down. Of course, the turnover is going down, sick leave, safety incidents, stress and burnout. It's really massive numbers here, and the business case can be quite substantial by working with organizational happiness. And I'm showing this because it's sometimes when we talk about happiness, we talk about it like hippie happy, and we talk about doing high fives and having pool tables in the canteen and things like that. But this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about happiness or well-being in every sense for the individual, and I'll come back to that. And if you're able to work on that, you'll have a really, really nice business case, and even have happier, healthier employees. So I think it's a win-win situation. And I also want to address, it's all about unlocking potential. We as consultants, and I'm also a consultant and a trusted advisor, very often we talk about change, disruption, reinventing ourselves, and the speed of change, things like that. And I think all this conversation about rapid change, disruption, and reinventing yourself every 3 months, if that's the case, it makes your organization not happy, and at least it makes your organization a little tense, and maybe even some individuals a little bit afraid. And this is not a place where you perform. You're not performing if you're changing all the time, if you're tense, and if you're in a closed environment. So this one is really about unlocking the potential that you already have. And I will talk about it from a statistical perspective. The recent number from Gallup, they do this at least once a year, I think twice a year. They measure employee engagement on different societies or different countries. From the US, the result was that only 34% of employees in the US, in average, of course, they felt that they were highly engaged at work. And if you look at that number, and you probably have heard that number also, but if you look at that number, the potential that you have in your organization already is massive. So I don't think it's about reinventing or disrupting. I think it's about releasing the potential that you already have. And that story is a lot more compelling than the story about change all the time. If you're talking about what's the potential you have, what are the superpowers you have in your organizations, how can you put them into play for the mission of your organization? So I think the storytelling around this it's much easier and it's much more compelling than some of the stories we tell as consultants when we go into organizations and talk about disruption. So sometimes I use this metaphor, and I'll go it briefly, but this is corns, and they turn into popcorns, of course. And this metaphor is this something you already have in you, you just need to be heated. And I think the heating is leadership, it's communication, it's being in an environment where you like to be, it's like having friends at work and things like that. So how can we make you as an employee pop and thereby being happier, healthier, and perform better? So that's about the potential that you already have in your organization. So the happiness part is this. I'll talk more about any of these 3 pillars. The idea is that you work on purpose, strength, and compassion. And for you, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's handles that you can take to find your organizational happiness sweet spot. So it's working with purpose. It's what's the story you tell to all your stakeholders around. And for some organizations, this is very easy. If you work for UN, like I do in Costa Rica, I mean, peace building missions and things like that. It's a nice purpose. It's a nice storytelling. You're able to attract top talent easily. But if you work for other institutions, if you work for a tobacco company, or for more difficult storytelling about your purpose. Why are you here? Purpose is not about profit. It's about It's a heartfelt purpose that is bigger than profit. Why are you here? Who do you serve? How do you give back to society? Because that's what we all want to be a part of. That we want to be a part of an organization that serves and gives back. So how do you build that story? Even if you're Coca-Cola, and basically what you have is water with sugar in it, you need to tell a different story around it, and they're very clever in that. And I love Coca-Cola, by the way. So this is about building your story and building your purpose, so you're able to attract top talent and retain talent. Because if you can't do that, you'll have a losing strategy. And I think we're moving into a phase now, and maybe also Jan with something you're doing, where we're getting into a phase where it's more and more difficult to get talent into, or get people, or the right people with the right competences into your organization. And some organizations even call it war for talent. And one of the attractions is that you have a compelling purpose, a heartfelt purpose. And of course, there's many things you can do around that. Strength is around strengths-based leadership. A good example of this is that what is happening in the annual appraisal in organizations, or the annual performance management review, very often, or that's how I'm brought up in corporate world, is that we talk a little bit about how is it going, and then we very easily and very quick dive into what are my weaknesses that I need to focus on, so I can be a little better at my weaknesses that I am now. And this is a losing strategy. The conversation should be, and this is a long conversation, but I'm just concluding on it, the conversation should be, what is it that you're really good at? How can we put that into play for the purpose of our organization? And some organizations are starting to use words like, what are your superpower? What are our superpowers? And how can we create circumstances where we bring you into situations where you use your superpowers? This is also a longer conversation and a 1.5 day course even. Compassion, compassion is the last one, which is really, compassion is sometimes, I'll just get to that compassion. There you go. Sorry about that. Compassion is really about leadership. I don't think you can have real leadership without compassion. And compassion in this sense is, or the definition is, an interest in understanding other people's difficulties and a burning desire to do something about it. Compassion is real leadership, and it's not just empathy, because empathy can be a passive thing, but it's empathy and a burning desire to do something about it or help the people around. And of course, there are a lot of things you can do. What you really want to do here is cultivate a culture of compassion in your organization. So these are the 3 areas. If you're a leader in an organization, you have your financial performance. You have that almost at least every month, but probably almost every day or every week. You know your financial performance. You probably have the same with your customer satisfaction. You know if you're measuring on your customer satisfaction. Do you know if you have happy customers or satisfied customers? And then we have employee engagement, and we all think that that's probably one of the most important things in the organization to be able to perform and deliver results. And that we measure once a year, which means that we measure it maybe in January or February, and we only have the data until May, and then we publish the data maybe 2 or 3 months later, which means that we're acting on old data. We are fooling ourselves or kidding ourselves that we know how the the organization is doing, but it's really only a snapshot of what happened 4 or 5 months ago. And I think it's also a longer conversation, but I think we need to fix that because I think we are fooling ourselves and we're acting on gut feelings very often in terms of employee engagement and organizational happiness. So what I would recommend is that you measure every second week or every month that you ask some questions. This is what we call pulse surveys. And there's some of them on the market, and we have developed one that is measuring organization happiness and real employee engagement. It's 10 questions. And the intention is to have your motivation landscape every month, so you know who are the lighthouses in your organization, who are doing a really good job as a leader that we can learn from, and we can ask, well, what is it that you're doing? And also we know where is there smoke before it becomes a fire. And I think we should have real-time data on employee engagement and organizational happiness. But this is then you get feedback from your employees, you put your organizations into it, and it's 3 simple steps, and then you get your feedback. Here is so what you do is you set up your organization, and then you decide how often you want feedback. I think sometimes this measurement about measuring, monitoring, and follow-up is kind of the missing link in many of these initiatives about well-being, happiness, employee engagement. Because if you're not measuring and monitoring how it's going, and it's very difficult to identify the actions that you need to take in your organization. So what this is that you can, on a sliding scale from 0 to 100, you can give feedback, and also you can log in yourself. And then you do this on the 10 questions. And when you have done the 10 questions is something that we have developed. And of course, we have looked into a lot of research and scientific studies also, including Gallup, that these 10 questions are closely linked to organizational happiness and employee engagement. So there is a link between, if this is low, I feel people care about me, there is a link that you're probably not so motivated, or you're probably not performing so good as you could be if you had a score at your, of course, your motivation landscape for your whole organization. I think I will end it here. You will have some more slides, and you will see some more reporting and questions and things like that. But I want to leave space for conversation now that we have each other.
Okay, Lars, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the sound was a bit blurry at times, but hopefully people could hear the most important things from your presentation. And since you're gonna share with us, so I think it's not gonna be a problem. And so maybe Jan or Nicholas, would you like to ask something? Lars?
Thank you very much, Lars. It was a very, very nice presentation. A lot of things. I wrote some things down. I like very much. I think you must be very happy for your book. You sound very happy. So happiness, organizational happiness. That must be really good. The book made you happy, I think. Very nice. I like very much the picture with the popcorn, which is the corn which is heated, and giving people, the chance to unlock the potential. And I think that's very good also for an employer to see that you have employees who like their work, who can use their qualifications, and I think that's very, very important. I think that makes people very happy on a working place, because it's 8 hours every day. So I think that can make a happy organization, happiness in the organization, and maybe coming back very close to a cozy organization, hygge, the Danish word hygge. So things can maybe go together, I think. Yeah. What more?
Do you have any questions, Jan?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I have questions. What's your experience with your general experience with organizations? Also, when you go into an organization, what's the process? How do you take things up when you are going to investigate an organization for these things? Can you tell a bit more about that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it makes sense, the question.
Sure. Yeah, for sure, because it's something that that I get asked a lot, and also because there's a lot of interest. So if you talk about it on a keynote or in a network or something, the next question is very much that you're asking there. Yeah. So how do we take the next step, or what will you? And I can take a recent example that we worked with Boston Scientific, with many thousand people there. So it was important that it was not a very complex or HR animal that you're rolling out to the organization, but it's more a leadership tool or leadership facilitation of better leadership and better engagement. So what we did there was that we started by measuring with the tool that I just showed. So we said, what is the baseline that we have right now? If we just ask everyone, how are you doing with the 10 questions? So we had kind of a baseline that is very easy, because it's just asking all the people on their phones or email or WhatsApp or whatever and then you kind of have the results on the different areas and managers. And then we started training. Then we had what we called a training and scoping workshop. So with a core team from them, HR and a couple of managers and stakeholders, we had 10 people that we spent 2 days with. So we trained them in the concept briefly, and then we developed a roadmap for them to roll it out into the organization. So they walked away with a roadmap. And then the first step of the roadmap was around communication, of course, but that was an internal thing they did. And then we trained, in this case, we trained top 130. So we had 130 managers in different groups, training them. And they were trained in the concept, but they also themselves defined what would I go and do now? What would make sense for me? What would have the most value for me to do in my team right now? So there was a lot of different actions. And then, of course, they measured again. And now we're following up on different actions.
All right, thank you. And maybe, Nicholas, you have something to ask? You always have something to ask. So.
Hey, you know me, yeah, of course. Thanks, Lars, a lot for my. Yeah, I wanted to reflect a little bit on those 3 points. Basically, you outlined that are important: the purpose, then compassion, and I liked a lot about focusing on superpowers. Basically, discovering those instead of kind of focusing on improving weaknesses, if you will. So with regards to the purpose, I've got a question actually. So you kind of mentioned a lot about the company's purpose, I understand, which would allow attract employees, professionals, and so on. What is your take on company's purpose, which from my personal experience is less tempting and attractive to people versus the personal purpose. When you create basically, a personal purpose for them once they are already in the organization, which, company purpose does not feel that appealing anymore unless it kind of correlates with the personal purpose. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a very good question, because I think for some of us, we are lucky enough to do something that we love, and so there's kind of a very close alignment with our organization and what we're doing. But for, I would say, 90% of the population in the world, they are going to work because they need an education for their kids. And on that, I think it's sometimes we're too competent in talking about purpose and meaning and walking into an organization every day that saves the planet and things, because that's not the real life for most of the people that are on the planet. So I think on the personal why, I think we just need to have an organization why that, and I will use the word here very intentionally, that resonates with my personal why. Something that I can be proud of being a part of. Maybe my personal why is to feed my kids and get them through college. And that's why I'm working so many hours every day. But if I, on top of that, can be in a situation or in a content where the mission of my company is something I can be proud of, that are giving back to society, or having a tagline that I can explain when I'm at a dinner party or something. I think it needs to resonate, but it doesn't need to align completely. I don't think we can demand that or can even find that for most organizations. Is that kind of addressing what you're asking with me?
Yes, Lars. Well, yeah. I think it does make sense. Not sure how how much can we further develop the conversation. Just maybe just one more step, and then I'll shut up about this one. So what I found out also, well, I used to work for construction industry, where people were joining the company mainly because of the money, I would say, and then interesting perspective. The company's purpose itself, or the vision, the mission, actually how they presented themselves, weren't very much a driver for people. However, certain departments basically in the company managed to create a certain micro purpose, if you will, or micro purpose which is appealing to the team. So how do you find those department purposes versus the company purposes, which kind of not necessarily clash with each other, but can not even substitute, but kind of excel or multiply, and so on. What's your opinion about that?
I agree that very often we see that, especially in industries and companies like you I've been in the construction industry also. I've been in a cement company for some years, and you kind of have to develop a subculture or a department culture, and that very much is up to the leaders and the teams in the groups that you have there. And I think very often we see that, and then we are attracted to, or we stay in that company because we have a good leader, or we have a nice work environment with the colleagues that we have. And that could be a very strong purpose, or a very strong connection there. I agree with that.
Thank you, Mykolas, for your interesting question. And do you think, Mykolas, Danske Bank in Lithuania would be interested into happiness training and courses run by Lars?
Oh, I have no doubts. I'm sure actually HR is obviously kind of progressive organization now, looking to the latest trends. But from my limited visibility, only maybe observing my department kind of needs and so on, I don't see that much progressive view as Lars kind of outlined in our framework, focusing on superpowers rather than actually improving weaknesses. On the other hand, compassion. I think focus on compassion is well kind of taught to the leader. So I'd say 1 out of 3 kind of covered. So I trust yes, HR and Danske Bank would benefit. The question is how much will they would have, to get some external help, but they constantly do that. So
Yes,
I trust.
thank you so much.
I trust get you've got some connections to HR in Danske Bank, right? So we could arrange certain discussions around that, and we'll see maybe something
Yes.
can actually develop into a good discussion and cover some business opportunities.
Yes, I would be happy to facilitate that meeting. And if it's possible to connect with the human resource people, and if they would be interested, so yeah, I'm open for that. And this is why basically Lars is here, because he's also interested in spreading happiness virus, also in Lithuania. I'm sorry, just making a bit funny, but I think it's very necessary in within our organizations in Lithuania to know a bit more how to do it and why. So why, how, and what, we definitely need to know about that when it comes to happiness at work. Do you agree?
For sure.
Okay, Lars, I think I'd like to thank you once more for a great presentation. I will share the material with all of you, and then you also send me some material on Dropbox, right? So I will make sure to also to share it. Thank you so much for being here, and I really hope and I want to participate in that, continuing this initiative. So I hope it's not the first, it's not the last time we are talking about that. Okay, and thank you, Mikolas and Jan, for participating. And I hope to see you next time at the webinar. Have a nice evening.